Levenstein.
And I'm Lorena Zarowski.
And today you're watching Exploring History. Today we're going to talk about Period 5, Industrialization and Global Integration, which began in 1750 due to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution began in England in 1730. It caused the migration of people to cities to work in factories.
Urbanization was the movement of people to cities. Due to the enclosure movement, where farmers' land was taken, people migrated to the cities where there were factories and they could find work.
Steam engines were invented due to the Industrial Revolution. These engines were fueled by coal in the beginning, but as the revolution progressed, petroleum was used to power it. The engine provided more energy than any other form of power that was used before.
At first, coal was the main source for fuel for the engine in the Industrial Revolution. But in the 19th century, petroleum became very popular. Petroleum was used especially after engines started running on diesel and later gasoline.
And finally, the 7 Years' War. The 7 Years' War began in 1756 and lasted until 1863. The British were victorious in the war against France and its allies.
The Industrial Revolution began in Western Europe because they had motivation, materials, and skilled labor. Textile production and the invention of the steam engine were the first events that occurred. After the introduction of the steam engine, there were many technological advancements, such as the invention of the cotton gin. Britain industrialized first from 1715 to 1850. Natural resources were available in Britain, like coal and iron. Britain also had a river that was used for water power and harbors so that they had an easier time trading. They also had a stable government so that they had more money for the economy to develop and also to invest in wars. Britain had many people as people migrated to cities due to urbanization and became workers in the factories. They also had materials such as coal and iron ore. Britain had many colonies, so they had markets to sell their goods to. One last thing that Britain had was transportation, including railroads. The industrialization in Britain started in their textile industry, inventions including the flying shuttle, spinning jenny, water frame, spinning mule, power loom, and cotton gin caused an increase in cotton output since the goods were produced more efficiently in the factories. More people started migrating to cities due to European enclosure movement and to become workers in the factories, and there were more jobs available. People worked long hours, and it was very dangerous in the factories, especially for children who were the ones that went inside machines to fix them.
The United States followed Britain's lead. The cotton gin was invented in Connecticut in 1793 by Eli Whitney. This caused cotton to be highly profitable, especially in the South. In the South, cotton was cleaned using the cotton gin and processed by slaves. In the Northeast, factories were created. These factories produced textiles using the cotton from the South. Also in the Northeast, railroads were built. These railroads were also built to connect the Midwest and the South. These railroads caused crops to be transported quicker to Chicago and cities in the North. The North and South were involved in a civil war. The South was for slavery because it increased their economy while the North were opposed. The North won the Civil War, so slavery was outlawed in the United States in 1865. After the Civil War, the government became very interested in industry. They even were involved in making the Transcontinental Railroad, which was finished in 1869 and stretched from east to the west. This was the longest railroad at this time. By 1900, the United States was the world's biggest steel producer, and the U.S. Steel Corporation was the world's first billion-dollar corporation.
Now let's compare North America to South America. Throughout North and South America, there were many government differences before the Enlightenment. In North America, there was a parliamentary government. In South America, there were viceroys that were usually controlled by an absolute monarch back in Europe because most civilians that were touched by Europeans were owned by them. This was due to the superior weaponry that Europeans had compared to the indigenous peoples. In addition, conflicting beliefs grew as a result of the Enlightenment. For example, a belief known as conservatism was strongly rejected by French societies in Latin America, yet accepted in North America. An example that rubs off exists today as the Republican Party, an extremely conservative group. But on the other hand, ideals like radicalism began as well and were used by the Jacobins during the French Revolution. It emphasized drastic change and equality, a virtue not concerned with in the Northern Americas.
Oh, hello. I'm John Locke. I'm an Enlightenment philosopher who came up with popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty is the idea that rulers derive their authority from those they governed. If those they governed are unhappy, they have the right to overthrow their ruler. These two ideas call for equality and will condemn the legal and social privileges enjoyed by aristocrats. They will also call for the creation of a society which all individuals are created equal before the law.
Both North and South America were influenced by Enlightenment ideals. This created different forms of new thinking, where people began to question their government. This led to rebellions among countries in North and South America. The United States went through a civil war, which ultimately abolished slavery in North America, and South America became independent from Spain and Portugal. The Llaneros and Creoles were led by Simón Bolívar, who freed Latin America from Spain. Another similarity between North and South America is that after the revolutions, people reacted to all the chaos brought by the revolutions, and many new ideologies were created. To be specific, the three main new ideologies were conservatism, liberalism, and radicalism.
Enlightenment ideas caused the American colonies to try to break free from the British. Led by George Washington, the Americans finally ended the war in Yorktown, Virginia. America established a representative government that was based on Enlightenment principles.
Hello, I am George Washington, and I was a military general and later President of the United States. I provided strong and imaginative leadership for the colonial army. I led thousands of American and French forces into Yorktown, Virginia, and caused the British to surrender after a 20-day siege during the American Revolution.
The steam engine was created by James Watt. It was powered by coal. This steam engine was a vital power source during the Industrial Revolution. It helped power machines, boats, and trains. Due to the steam engine, trade was improved and more people started traveling.
The French revolted against their king and established a republic. The revolution was led by a military dictator named Napoleon, and as many as 30,000 overenthusiastic people died. The revolution's slogan was liberty, equality, fraternity. They expressed their rights in the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen.
Spurred on by the French Revolution and led by Toussaint Louverture, the slaves in Saint-Domingue revolted against their white French masters. Napoleon sent an army to the rebellion, but it was defeated. This was the first successful slave revolt, and it caused the colony of Haiti to be established.
Edward Jenner created the first smallpox vaccine. Smallpox was a contagious disease that caused fever and left permanent scars on victims. The vaccine was a virus related to smallpox that would help people develop an immunity to the disease.
The middle class came about due to the Industrial Revolution. The middle class consisted of factory owners, shippers, and merchants. They lived in nice housing, dressed and ate well, and the women did not work. These people had a lot of time, so they were the ones who began revolutions.
Even though the slave trade was over, former slaves were not treated equally. When slavery came to an end, there was a rise in indentured servitude, or temporary slave.
The Latin American Revolution was led by Simón Bolívar, who was an upper-class Creole elite that helped the colonies gain independence through military victories. The Latin American Revolution effectively added to the decline of Spain as a world power. Oliver Twist was about life as a struggling laborer in London during the 19th century.
Art was considered romantic in the fourth period. It shifted to realism, where there were many dark scenes of city life. It was mostly portrayed by transportation that was fueled by black smoke.
Many agricultural workers in Britain were forced off farmland by the government. This policy caused landless peasants to move to cities, which formed a large potential workforce for factories.
At the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848, feminists issued a Declaration of Sentiments, which basically demanded equal political and economic rights for U.S. women. Women fought for equal rights throughout the 19th century, and they acquired new opportunities in education, employment, and political areas.
The invention of the telegraph made it possible to exchange messages quickly. In the 1830s, communications could only be done over land. However, in the 1850s, engineers created submarine cables that could transport messages through oceans.
An artistic style called Impressionism was created. Artists purposely unfocused their camera and took pictures of nature scenes to achieve this style.
During Alexander II's reign, he wrote the Emancipation Manifesto in March 1861. This document became the law. Serfs were allowed to become free citizens, marry anyone they wished, own land, and have their own businesses. The Transcontinental Railroad was located in the United States and went from the east to the west. Railroads helped speed up the delivery of crops and goods and factories.
The Transcontinental Railroad was the world's longest railroad at the time.
The Suez Canal is located in Egypt, and it connects the Mediterranean Sea with the Red Sea. The canal made it possible for steamships to travel from Britain to India in less than 2 weeks.
The United Fruit Company was a U.S.-based business that operated on an international scale. It owned huge banana plantations throughout Central America. The bananas were shipped to the United States and Europe.
Due to the new inventions, people started migrating to new places due to lack of employment, famine, the abolition of slavery, and a fresh start. Many people who had already established themselves in these new places resisted these migrants. Legal restrictions on migrations began to appear. The Chinese Exclusion Act was signed by President Chester Arthur. It prohibited Chinese laborers from migrating into the United States. I'm Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and I was a feminist. During a conference in 1840, I was kicked out of an anti-slavery conference in London because I am a female, so I decided to organize a feminist conference. I organized a conference of feminists who met at Seneca Falls to allow women to support anti-slavery movements.
I'm Karl Marx. I'm a German theorist. I am against the concept of socialism because I believe it will not solve the social or economic problems of the early industrial era. However, I believe that the socialist problems were an inevitable result of the capitalist economy, and individuals in society were in two main classes. The groups included the capitalists who were in charge of industrial machineries and factories.
Due to tensions between Europeans who wanted to take over African colonies, the Berlin Conference took place. 12 European states, the United States, and the Ottoman Empire met up and set rules on colonizing Africa. They agreed that each colony had to notify the others if they wanted to colonize and follow up by a signed agreement with an African ruler or a military conquest. No Africans were present at this conference.
On September 19, 1893, Lord Glasgow, the Governor of New Zealand, signed a new electoral act. This act gave women in New Zealand the right to vote in parliamentary election. New Zealand was the first self-governed country to allow women to vote.
Heart of Darkness is a novel written by Joseph Conrad. The novel criticized imperialist attitudes towards Africans. European literature often had imperialist theme.
The open door policy forced China to open up trade to all countries equally. This ended the spheres of influence in China.
The Europeans thought that by conquering Africa, Asia, and Oceania, they were doing them a favor because of new inventions and the possibility of travel. To many Europeans, bringing them technology, education, medicine, and Christianity was very noble. Rudyard Kipling wrote a poem about these ideas.
I'm Charles Darwin. I'm an English biologist. I wrote the famous book, The Origin of Species. In the book, I talked about the idea of natural selection. This concept stated that the fittest and the best group will survive and reproduce, while the inferior groups will eventually die off. However, scientific racists use this theory as a way to further explain and exemplify differences between the strong and the weak.
The majority occupation remained to be farmers throughout the globe. Due to the boom in population, people needed more food. So farming continued to be the main occupation in order to provide resources for the many people on Earth. Farming represents interactions between humans and the environment because of the sheer reason that the farming invokes planting seeds in the ground to grow crops. Farming dates back to 8000 BCE, when agriculture was first practiced. Another continuity that persisted throughout the globe were traditional religions, ideology, especially Christianity, had further expanded their borders, and obviously the expansion of religion represents culture. But furthermore, the spread of religion represents the economic systems due to the Columbian Exchange, which had already connected trade routes between the Americas and Afro-Eurasia, yet another continuity.
Guten Tag. I am Albert Einstein. I was the symbol of revolution in physics. My theory of special relativity demonstrated that there is not spatial and chronological framework in the universe. According to the theory, it is no longer made sense to speak of space and time as absolutes, because the measurement of those two categories always varies with the motion of the observer.
There were many changes in the Industrial Revolution that had influenced society to this very day. For example, fossil fuel-based machines were implemented. This not only allowed for factories to be placed anywhere, but it completely catalyzed good production. It produced more and worked faster than an average human, but at the same time, it took jobs away from people. Some enraged people rebelled and destroyed machines. One of the best-known rebellion groups is known as the Luddites. Fossil fuels-based machines represent interactions with the environment because fossil fuels come from deceased plants, animals, and other natural resources. It also represents culture because it was a new form of technology. Another change, which is extremely important, regards the new sets of ideals that came from the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment completely changed ways of thinking. Its monumental influence led to numerous amounts of political revolutions that challenged the idea of absolutism and monarchies. The United States, French, Haitian, Latin American, and Mexican revolutions are but a few revolutions. The Enlightenment represents politics because after the rebellions, new political structures was formed. After all, the purpose of a revolt is to create political change.
Today, the Crimean conflict can trace its origins back to the Crimean War, which lasted from 1853 until 1856. The Crimean War was between Russia and the industrialized powers of Western Europe, which included Britain and France. Due to Russia's incapability to adjust to the large-scale industrialization that both Britain and France had undergone, Russia lost the war, and the industrialized powers were victorious. Today, Russia is trying to gain back Ukraine, which turned its back on Russia because of their defeat in the Crimean War. Now that Russia is industrialized, they are able to mass a major assault on countries. Since Ukraine is mostly populated with Russians, they have a closed industrial tie with Russia, and the people of Ukraine are willing to allow Russia to take over due to their unhappiness with the president, Oleksandr Turchynov.
Period 5 ended in 1900 with the Italian unification. The Italian unification was a revolution that grouped different states of the Italian peninsula into a single state of the Kingdom of Italy. This revolution began in 1861 and ended in 1870.
In 1863, Lincoln passed the United States Emancipation Proclamation, which ordered all the slaves to be free.
The Meiji Restoration took place in 1868 when the boy emperor took power. The Meiji Restoration returned authority to the Japanese emperor and brought an end to the series of military governments that had dominated Japan.
The incandescent lamp was invented in 1879 by Thomas Edison. Electricity spread throughout the world and created a major change in technology that would help develop the many devices we use today.
The Boxer Rebellion began in 1898 and lasted until 1900. It was a violent movement that focused on eliminating foreign influence on China.
Swintastic 7, Industrial Revolution. Get it up. Industry. Our hands get filthy when we working with machines. Industry. It all started in the 18th century in England. Talking about Europe now. It all started in the 18th century in England. Handmade clothing all the while. Ain't nobody got no time for making textiles but John K. Invented the flying shuttle for you. Can't keep my eyes off this profit, baby, weave with looms. Industry. Period 5. We woke up the city saying, why is this so filthy? Oh baby. So many migrants coming all night. The last thing I remember is coming to the factory to get some work. History or it's work. AP World. AP working all night. AP World. AP working all night.
backs all cut off while I fight for low wages. Working with infants and women, I'm boycotting it, and I make a union, boy, I'm working. Get your plan right, locomotive to pull the freight, moving all your goods across the continent tonight, boy, I'm working. Making some fuel out of oil, and I shovel up some coil and ride on my steamboat, polluting on that big body ship, cruising all that. Industry is so good, cruising all that. Industry is so good. Revolution did come next, if I do say so myself. If I do say so myself. If I do say so myself. Revolution did come next, if I do say so myself. If I do say so myself. If I do say so myself. Hold up.
American, French, Haitian, Latin American wars. They were the battles that the world has yet been fought. Talk about the working class taking initiative in France. The people decided to give Napoleon a chance. What to say about the revolution in Haiti? It started by a slave revolt, then fought by the Navy. Retaliation would never stop the slaves, though. It was significant for being the first slave revolt. Hold up, Latin America.